The Jesus we see in many churches today, if not most, is very different from what he actually looked like.
There's a letter written a long time ago that might change how we think about Jesus' appearance. It's from a man named Lentulus, who wrote to Caesar. In the letter, he describes Jesus in great detail. And guess what? His description doesn't match the usual pictures we see. Some people say the letter is fake, that Lentulus never existed. But if it's real, it could tell us a lot about Jesus, and it might make us look at those old pictures in a whole new way. So, what exactly does this letter reveal? Join us as we take a dive into the letter and see what it reveals about Jesus. Who was Lentulus? How did he know Jesus so well? And what does his description tell us about the real Jesus, the Divine Mercy image? In the 20th century, one of the first pictures of Jesus was the Divine Mercy image. Many Roman Catholics and Anglicans use this picture almost everywhere. According to stories, Jesus appeared to and showed the design of the picture to St. Faustina Kowalska in a vision in 1931 in Plock, Poland. Faustina wrote in her diary that Jesus appeared to her and asked her to have an artist paint a picture like the one she saw. Faustina found an artist named Eugene Kazmarowski to make the Divine Mercy picture of Jesus. In this picture, Jesus is shown with his right hand raised in a blessing and his left hand touching his chest. Two big rays, one red and the other white, come out from near his heart. These rays mean that the picture shows the kindness and mercy of God given to the world, especially through baptism and the Eucharist. The Divine Mercy image has become a very popular symbol of hope and forgiveness for many people all over the world. It has been made in many different ways, including paintings, statues, stained glass windows, and cards. The image has also inspired many prayers, songs, and spiritual exercises. Although the Divine Mercy image is very popular, it is said that Jesus said that the spiritual aspect of the picture is more important than the picture itself. When Faustina first saw the original picture being painted, she cried and complained to Jesus, "Who will paint you as beautiful as you are?" Jesus answered her, "It's not about how beautiful the colors or the brushstrokes are. The greatness of this picture is in my grace." This message reminds us that we should focus on the spiritual meaning and blessings of the image, not just how it looks. That's not the only popular picture of Jesus we have today, though. There are other ones with very interesting backstories. The Head of Christ by Warner Sallman. Another significant image of Jesus is The Head of Christ by Warner Sallman. This iconic depiction, often referred to as the Sallman head, became one of the most widely reproduced religious images of the 20th century. In the painting, Jesus is portrayed from the head to the chest, his gentle gaze turned slightly upward and to the side, exuding both serenity and compassion. Sallman, who was both a commercial artist and deeply religious, claimed that the inspiration for the Head of Christ came to him in a vivid, almost otherworldly vision late one night. He described the experience as a moment of divine clarity, saying that the image appeared to him suddenly at 2 a.m. in January of 1924, as if placed in his mind by a higher power. Though initially meant to be a devotional piece for his Christian followers, the Head of Christ quickly transcended its original audience. It was widely adopted by various Christian denominations and even became a comforting symbol for soldiers during World War II who carried small reproductions of it as a reminder of faith and hope in the midst of battle. The image's reach was so profound that it became almost synonymous with the depiction of Jesus in many homes, churches, and even hospitals around the world. The Coptic Orthodox Church holds this image in particularly high regard due to a miraculous event surrounding a 12-year-old boy named Isaac Ayub. Isaac, who had been diagnosed with a severe form of cancer, saw the eyes of Jesus in the Sallman painting shedding tears. Deeply moved by this vision, Isaac believed that he had witnessed a divine moment. Incredibly, following this experience, Isaac's health began to improve. Father Isaac Sallman of St. Mark's Coptic Church in Houston shared this miracle with the congregation, declaring that Isaac had been healed. This claim was later supported by Dr. Atef Riskala, who examined the boy the next day and confirmed that there were no remaining signs of leukemia. The image, already revered, took on a new life in the Coptic community as a symbol of healing and divine intervention. Salvator Mundi by Leonardo da Vinci. Salvator Mundi by Leonardo da Vinci is another profoundly important image of Jesus with an intriguing backstory of its own. This Renaissance masterpiece shows Jesus dressed in a flowing blue robe, typical of the period's rich sartorial style, while he raises his right hand in the gesture of blessing. In his left hand, Jesus holds a perfectly clear crystal orb, a symbol of his dominion over the world and the cosmos. The orb, crafted with such precision, was meant to symbolize not only Jesus' spiritual authority, but also the unity and perfection of the divine order. Through this visual metaphor, Da Vinci captured the tension between the earthly and the divine, suggesting that Jesus was the bridge between the two. Salvator Mundi is steeped in the spiritual and mystical traditions of the time, created not merely as an artistic achievement, but as a means for people to connect with Jesus on a deeper spiritual level. The placement of the hand and the orb are no accidents. They were part of a larger theological dialogue that Renaissance thinkers engaged in, a meditation on the dual nature of Christ as both human and divine. This painting embodies the notion that Jesus, as the Savior of the world, hence the title Salvator Mundi, holds the universe in his hand while offering a gesture of peace and blessing to humanity. Interestingly, Salvator Mundi became the subject of renewed attention in the 21st century when, after centuries of obscurity and restoration, it was identified as an original Leonardo da Vinci painting. In November 2017, the painting made headlines worldwide when it was sold at auction for a staggering $450 million, setting a new record for the most expensive artwork ever sold. The sale reignited debates not only about the painting's provenance, but also about Da Vinci's portrayal of Christ, whether it was a historically accurate depiction or a more symbolic representation of divine authority. The painting's mysterious journey through history, its near-lost status and eventual re-emergence added a layer of mystique, making it one of the most enigmatic and debated images of Jesus ever created. Now, while earlier depictions of Jesus were often inspired by visions or revelations, as seen in the works of Sallman and Da Vinci, there are accounts of Jesus' physical appearance that claim to be rooted in first-hand experience. One of the most fascinating and debated of these is the Letter of Lentulus to Caesar. According to historical tradition, Lentulus was a Roman official during the time of Jesus, though his existence remains a matter of speculation. Unlike the visions of artists like Sallman and Da Vinci, this letter describes Jesus based on everyday encounters. Lentulus, who was not one of Jesus' disciples but a contemporary Roman official, provides a physical description of Jesus that suggests he was a well-known figure of his time. The letter describes Jesus with an almost mundane familiarity, contrasting sharply with the more divine or visionary portrayals of the Savior. So what kind of relationship did Lentulus have with Jesus? Let's take a closer look at Lentulus and answer all these questions. The mysterious Letter of Lentulus. Lentulus was the governor of Judea before Pontius Pilate, and he is known for a fascinating letter that gives us a detailed description of Jesus. This letter, called the Letter of Lentulus, has a mysterious background. It became quite famous in the 15th century and played a big role in shaping how Jesus was portrayed in art. According to Christopher Milas, an 18th century librarian from Jena, the letter was something special. He described it as being written in golden letters on red paper with an ornate binding. Sadly, this beautifully crafted letter is now lost. There was also a claim in the 19th century that the letter could be traced back to the time of Emperor Diocletian. However, this idea is not widely accepted by today's scholars. Over the years, different versions of the letter have appeared. One notable reference was by Ludolf, who included it in his writings about the life of Christ. Another important mention was in the works of Saint Anselm, though he did not originally write it. According to historical records, a scholar named Giacomo Colonna discovered the letter in 1432. He found it among ancient Roman documents sent from Constantinople to Rome. What makes this letter intriguing is how its description of Jesus matches up with other early portrayals, like those by Saint John of Damascus. This connection has led some people to believe that the letter might be genuine. So what does this letter actually say about Jesus? So how did he describe Jesus? In his letter, Lentulus describes Jesus in a very vivid way. he paints a picture of Jesus as a man of great power and virtue. Some people call him the prophet of truth, while his disciples refer to him as the Son of God. Lentulus describes Jesus as being of medium height and having a dignified presence. He compares Jesus' hair to the color of ripe hazelnuts. It is wavy and curly, reaching down to his shoulders and parted at the top in the Nazarene style. Lentulus describes Jesus' face as always cheerful, without any wrinkles or blemishes. His eyebrows are smooth and he has a full beard. His eyes are blue-gray and bright. Jesus' posture is straight, and his arms and hands are described as beautiful. Lentulus notes that Jesus was strict when correcting people, but gentle and kind when offering advice. He was cheerful, but always serious. Lentulus also mentions that Jesus never laughed, but was often seen weeping. He is described as the most beautiful among all people, capturing both his divine nature and his human qualities. A comparison with Scripture. To determine if the Letter of Lentulus is authentic, we need to compare its descriptions with the Scriptures. The letter describes Jesus as having a venerable appearance, someone who can be both feared and loved. This description matches Proverbs 1, which says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." Jesus' disciples saw him as someone who showed deep love, but was also just, following his Father's will closely. The letter mentions that Jesus had long hair, which some people find controversial. However, it's important to remember that Jesus was a Nazarene. Nazarites took a vow not to cut their hair. This tradition is consistent with the description in the letter. The letter also notes that Jesus was stern in his reprimands. This fits with Proverbs 3 verse 12, which says, "Whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth." Another statement in the letter says Jesus was never known to laugh, but often to weep. This aligns with Hebrews 4, which says Jesus was touched with the feeling of our infirmities and tempted in all points as we are. Jesus was known for his deep prayers and struggles, asking for the burden of death to pass from him, but still committed to fulfilling his Father's will. However, one part of the letter is controversial. It describes Jesus as the most beautiful among the children of men. This seems to contradict Isaiah 53, which states, "He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him." Some scholars suggest this difference might come from varying interpretations of Jesus' spiritual significance. The debate over authenticity. When we look closer at the Letter of Lentulus, there are more things to consider about its authenticity. Some scholars believe that the letter might not be a genuine historical document. Instead, it could be apocryphal, meaning it might have been created later, not during the time of Jesus. The content of the letter overlaps with other apocryphal writings, like the Epistle of Barnabas and the Shepherd of Hermas. These writings also include biblical figures or themes related to Jesus. In the 15th century, many manuscripts didn't mention Publius Lentulus as the governor of Judea. This missing detail suggests that the title could have been added later. Scholars think that Publius Lentulus might have been a Roman official who visited Jerusalem or Judea, but he wasn't necessarily the governor. This variation in manuscripts hints that there might have been different versions or additions made over time. Historical context of Roman consuls and Jesus. Roman history provides us with several names of luli, who were active around the time of Jesus' ministry. These individuals were consuls, and it was common for consuls to write letters to the Senate. This context makes us consider the authenticity of the Lentulus letter more carefully. The letter is said to give a detailed description of Jesus based on biblical records. But what about other historical records besides the Bible? There are other letters written about Jesus that also share information about his personality. One such letter is from Abgar of Edessa, who is known as one of the early Christian kings. Abgar was among the 70 disciples. In his letter to Jesus, he calls him the good physician and asks for healing of his disease. Many people believe that Jesus did visit Abgar and healed him. However, the response from Jesus indicates otherwise. Jesus clearly states that he would send one of his disciples to help Abgar instead of going himself. The description of Jesus' healing abilities in Abgar's letter is similar to what we see in Lentulus's description. This comparison helps us establish some level of authenticity for the Lentulus letter based on biblical records. But to truly confirm its authenticity, more substantial evidence is needed. The connection with other historical records and letters adds depth to our understanding of the letter and its place in the broader historical and religious context. In the letter from Pontius Pilate to Tiberius Caesar, Jesus is described as strict, pious, and a strong advocate for truth. This matches up with Lentulus's letter, which also calls Jesus the prophet of truth and says he was stern when giving reprimands. These descriptions from different letters seem to agree with each other. They suggest that Lentulus had a close encounter with Jesus. But how does this fit with the early images of Jesus that were painted? It's interesting to note that even though it was not allowed at the time, art started playing a big role in the church. Let's explore how early Christian art represents Jesus and see how it aligns with Lentulus's description. After the original apostles passed away, the early Christian church changed a lot. A small group of dedicated followers kept the faith alive. However, over time, Christianity began to evolve into something quite different from what is described in the New Testament. This change came about gradually, as new practices and beliefs were introduced. The earliest images that are believed to show Jesus date from around AD 24 to 256. These early artists lived about 200 years after Jesus had ascended to heaven. Because of this, they never saw Jesus or met anyone who had. Instead of trying to create a realistic portrait, these early artists used symbolic representations. One of the most common symbols was Christ as the Good Shepherd, holding a lamb. In these images, Jesus is shown as young, strong, and without a beard. Most of these early images were discovered in the catacombs of Rome, which were underground burial sites. This is different from Judea or Asia Minor, where the early Christians lived. Art and syncretism in early Christianity. Historians have a tough job figuring out if these early images really show Jesus. The problem is that they often look like pagan art, which also used the shepherd image to symbolize kindness and care. Early Christian artists often borrowed ideas from pagan art. It wasn't until after Emperor Constantine became involved with Christianity that detailed artistic portrayals of Jesus began to appear in churches. Before Constantine's time, there was a lot of resistance to creating images of Jesus. Many people thought it was wrong to depict him in art. But when Constantine accepted Christianity and started to reshape it to fit Roman customs, including the use of statues and images for worship, this changed. By the end of the 4th century, images of Jesus were becoming common in churches. People began to show great respect for these images. Some even started to worship them. Supporters of this practice argued that they were honoring symbols of their absent Lord and his saints. Despite ongoing resistance, the use of icons and images became firmly established in Christianity, particularly in Rome and Byzantium. Even though there were debates about it, art has played an important role in helping us visualize what Jesus might have looked like. The descriptions in the Bible give us some clues, but these early images offer a more tangible way to imagine Jesus' physical appearance. They complement the descriptions found in letters like Lentulus's and give us a better understanding of how early Christians might have pictured Jesus. Now let's turn our attention to something called the Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin and the image of Jesus. The artwork representing this emerging form of Christianity didn't just spring up out of nowhere. One of the most intriguing pieces of evidence is a cloth that some believe bears the actual image of Jesus. This cloth has fascinated historians and scientists alike, leaving many to wonder if it might have come from a divine source. In the year 1354, a piece of cloth known as the Shroud of Turin or the Veil of Veronica was discovered. This ancient linen cloth bears the faint yet detailed image of a man who many historians believe to be Jesus Christ. The Shroud of Turin, also called the Holy Shroud, is a length of linen with the faint impressions of the front and back of a man who appears to have been crucified. For centuries, it has been revered by many, particularly within the Catholic Church, as the actual burial shroud that wrapped Jesus' body after his crucifixion. According to tradition, Jesus' bodily image was miraculously imprinted onto the shroud. The Shroud of Turin is a 14th century artifact that has become a significant Catholic icon. Some people believe it is the authentic burial cloth of Jesus Christ, while others see it as a powerful religious symbol that represents the story of Christ, even if it's not the original shroud. Despite more than 600 years of historical records, the Shroud of Turin continues to be a major symbol for Christians around the world. What makes it so remarkable is the way the image was formed. How could the perfect impression of a human body be left on a cloth without harming the material itself? Scientists have speculated that a force similar to a thermonuclear flash might be responsible. This would be a process much more controlled than a nuclear explosion, leaving an image on the surface of the fibers without penetrating or damaging the cloth's thickness. It's as if the image was imprinted with such precision that only the top layer of fibers was affected, capturing a clear and detailed impression of a human form. The exact process behind the formation of the image remains a mystery, sparking debates and investigations. Some believe this mysterious imprint is evidence of a miraculous event, while others continue to study the shroud to understand how such an extraordinary image could have been created. Regardless of its origin, the Shroud of Turin continues to captivate the imagination and devotion of people across the globe, making it one of the most enduring and enigmatic artifacts in religious history. The Transfiguration theory and the Shroud. There's another interesting theory about the Shroud of Turin, which some people believe shows a miraculous image of Jesus. This theory suggests that the image on the shroud could be a result of the same divine power Jesus displayed during his transfiguration. The idea is that, during this event, a burst of divine energy from Jesus caused his blood to evaporate in an instant. At that moment, his image and body imprint were left on the cloth, preserving a literal snapshot of his resurrection. The shroud shows a faint image in a straw yellow color, appearing on the top layer of the cloth fibers. The image depicts a man with a beard, mustache, and shoulder-length hair parted down the middle. According to the description in Lentulus's letter, this man is tall and muscular. Measurements of the shroud suggest that the figure on it is between 1.70 to 1.88 meters tall, which is about 5 foot 7 inches. Additionally, reddish-brown stains are found on the cloth, matching the wounds described in the Bible's account of Jesus' crucifixion. Over time, debates about the shroud have quieted down, and it is now revered as the Holy Veil. Despite this, many people prefer to rely on the biblical descriptions of Jesus rather than a piece of cloth. For them, the Bible remains the most trusted source for understanding who Jesus was. How exactly does the Holy Book portray Jesus? For ages and generations, especially in Western cultures, the most common image of Jesus Christ has been that of a bearded, fair-skinned man with long, wavy, light brown or blonde hair, and in most cases, blue eyes. However, the Bible doesn't give a physical description of Jesus, and the evidence we have suggests he probably looked quite different from these popular portrayals. Our main accounts of Jesus come from the first 4 books of the New Testament, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. According to these Gospels, Jesus was a Jewish man born in Bethlehem and raised in Nazareth, a town in Galilee, during the 1st century. We know he was about 30 years old when he began his public ministry, as mentioned in Luke 3:23. Despite this, the Bible does not provide a detailed description of his appearance, only that he did not stand out in any remarkable way. An interesting detail comes from the account of Jesus' arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane before his crucifixion, Matthew 26:46-56. Judas Iscariot had to identify Jesus to the soldiers because Jesus looked like one of the many disciples. This suggests that Jesus and his followers looked very similar in appearance. Some scholars point to Revelation 1:14-15 for clues about Jesus' physical features. The passage describes his hair as being white like wool, and his eyes as being like a flame of fire. It also mentions that his feet were like burnished bronze. These descriptions imply that Jesus might have had darker skin and woolly hair, contrasting sharply with the traditional Western depictions. In 2018, a significant discovery was made. An early portrait of Jesus was found on the walls of a ruined church in southern Israel. Painted in the 6th century AD, this is the earliest known image of Christ discovered in Israel. The portrait shows Jesus with shorter, curly hair, reflecting the style common in the Eastern Byzantine Empire, particularly in regions like Egypt and Syria-Palestine. This depiction was quite different from the long-haired, bearded image that became popular later. By the 4th century, the portrayal of Jesus began to change. This new image was heavily influenced by representations of Greek and Roman gods, especially Zeus, the powerful Greek deity. From this period onward, Jesus was often depicted with long hair, a beard, and wearing a long robe, frequently seated on a throne. One notable example is a 5th century mosaic on the altar of the Santa Pudenziana Church in Rome. In these artworks, Jesus is often shown with a halo around his head, a symbol of his divine nature. As art and cultural influences evolved, so did the way Jesus was depicted. The image of Jesus with long hair and a beard, influenced by classical traditions, gradually became the dominant representation in Western art. Cultural influences on Jesus' image. Not all images of Jesus fit the familiar Western portrayal. Around the world, different cultures have depicted Jesus in ways that reflect their own ethnic and cultural identities. This happens because people often depict prominent religious figures in a way that aligns with their own racial and cultural characteristics. In the year 2001, a fascinating project led by a team of Israeli and British forensic anthropologists, along with computer programmers and a medical artist, aimed to recreate a more historically accurate image of Jesus. They used an Israeli skull dating back to the 1st century AD as their basis. By combining computer modeling with knowledge of how Jewish people looked during that time, they created an image of Jesus that, while not an exact likeness, is considered by scholars to be more accurate than many traditional artistic depictions of the Son of God. According to this research, Jesus likely had brown eyes, dark brown to black hair, and olive brown skin, characteristics common among people in Judea and Egypt during that era. Based on the average height of men at the time, Jesus might have stood about 5 feet 5 inches tall, 166 centimeters, which was typical for men of that period. Another scholar suggests that the newer images of Jesus, which often feature darker, possibly curlier hair, darker skin, and dark eyes, are likely more accurate representations. However, despite these advances in research and reconstruction, we may never know exactly what Jesus looked like. These descriptions might challenge the basis of the debate about Jesus' true appearance. They also raise questions about the visions seen by Fossa and Solon. Ultimately, any painting or image trying to capture his divine glory will fall short compared to what will be revealed on the day of his return. Many people eagerly anticipate that day, looking forward to witnessing the true nature of Jesus in all his glory. So, what do you think? Was Jesus a white man or a black Nazarene? Let us know in the comments section. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want more fascinating content like this. While you're still here, click the video on your screen to see more interesting content like this one.